Go on ahead.
Yeah, I'll read it. I don't care.
Oh, it's from Phil. Phil's last one.
Oh, of course.
Oh, Lord.
I don't.
You want to read that, JP?
I'm not.
I'm not reading it.
Yeah,
Phil,
I don't think we should read it.
What the fuck is that?
I mean, Flannel, you
You
can
come
read it if you want to.
Yeah, dog, don't even
I'm
do it,
not,
Sam.
that's
Well,
what I'm
you can
saying.
read it.
Look, if y'all gonna be on one like that, smash that like button too, because this is crazy, dog.
Getting out of
on some
pocket
bullshit.
already.
Dog.
Phil, you know you on bullshit, bro.
I'm looking
Don't
at
do
that
it.
already. Let's hurry up and get into the segment.
Yes.
Hurry up. You know what? Just take the segment.
Fair enough. All right. So as I said at the beginning of the show, the Lions in free agency, they made a big move for DJ Reed, which I think we're all pretty happy with. They re-signed Levi O. They got Roy Lopez, re-signed Davenport, Barnes. I think most of us can take away some positives from this free agency, some more than others. That is for damn sure if you've seen our social media. But I think all of us would kumbaya if we got one more edge rusher. And I know when you bring up the edge rusher conversation, a lot of the people in the chat are just going to be like, oh, so you wanted them to trade for Myles Garrett for $40 million? Oh, Trey Hendrickson. Oh, you want to give Josh Sweat $76 million? Yeah. For the record, I would have. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that there are a lot of bargain bin options out there that I think are very intriguing. And you know me, I'm not afraid to play Moneyball from a time to time. Are they the most ideal? Not necessarily. Do they all have flaws? Yes. But I am going to present you a few different edge rushers that are available. I got a list of some of their numbers that they've put up, some of the numbers that they've done throughout their career. JB, there's one specifically that I want you to do last. Has a very recent Detroit connection. I think you'll be able to tell which one it is. But put up any other one of them first, and we can profile
because I got a top three, man.
Yes.
I'm hoping I'm not the only one in Detroit who wants to see Big Z back. I liked what he did. He was in this room, wants to be here. You guys have talked about Matthew Judon, and then Von Miller is another one that I've seen a lot of people out there intrigued with. And so I'm looking forward to the breakdowns.
Hey, funny.
Well, speaking of Von Miller.
Yeah, just put up Von Miller. And Von Miller, unfortunately, according to Spot Track, does not have a calculated market value as of yet. But Von Miller, last season, he had 6 sacks, 8 quarterback hits, 32 pressures in 13 games, has 7 double-digit sack seasons, which I think when talking about Von Miller, that's kind of irrelevant now, but because out of all the players on this list, he's by far the one with the best career. He's a no-doubt first-ballot Hall of Famer. But the reason why those double-digit sack seasons aren't necessarily relevant now is because in 2025, he is going to be 36 years old, and he has had some recent injuries. He's certainly somebody that I'm not paying more than 10 million AAV, and probably even much less than that. It's just on Spot Track. He does not have a calculated market value. Anybody interested in Von Miller for a AAV deal with 1 year of less than 10 million?
He wouldn't make the veterans minimum, but what would you pay him? What, around 5-6 million for 1 year?
I mean, yeah.
In terms of the guarantee?
Yeah.
I wish that there was like a calculated market value. There isn't. For some of the others, there is. But for this one, I would just say anything less than 10 is a starting point. I would probably want like 5 or 6. But he is Von freaking Miller.
Absolutely.
He did play very well last year.
Did he get hurt at any point last year?
Well, he played 13 games. So I think
Okay.
I'm not sure if he did or not. But he's had like, I think a couple injuries recently.
And it's all within the context of realistically depth, because I know that all of us now are probably on that precipice of getting somebody else as it relates to a vet, and then go ham in the draft if you can get another 1 or 2. And that's where, when I look at Von Miller, I'm not looking at him the same way we had to when we first got Zadarius Smith. Zadarius Smith was here because Hutch went down. Who's Zadarius Smith or Von Miller or anybody else they're going to pick up is asked now to be in a rotation to be able to complement and support. And that's where it's like, you know what, if you can bottle up the best of Von Miller and control that usage and utilize him to his peak, that's where some of these players, I know Flannel was going to highlight, that's where they do become a little bit more intriguing than knowing that the whole weight of the world has to be on.
No, absolutely. At this point, he is a rotational piece, and I think we all know that. But just based on IQ alone and just the history of him being a dog in this league, I feel like he is the type of player that would come in and fit this culture right away. I do feel like he is somebody that could contribute. I mean, 6 sacks last year, that's nothing to sneeze at, man, at the age that he's at. So I would take a chance on it. I would. It's a low risk, low money deal. You come in for a year, show us what you got, and hopefully we can make a run at this thing.
Yeah, and you know what, chat family, I want to know your top 1, 2, or 3 options of what's left out there right now for the defensive line as well as we go through these things. Yep. But Flannel.
Hey, I've got a few more, so maybe there'll be some you like better, maybe there won't be. Put another one up, Mr. JB Smoove.
Let's go with this one.
Azeez Ojulari, 2024. He had 6 sacks, 10 quarterback hits, 22 quarterback pressures in only 11 games. He has never had a double-digit sack season because, aside from his rookie year, he has been bit by the injury bug quite often. If it wasn't for that, he would probably be commanding a lot more money, and heck, maybe even the Giants would have re-signed him. But the good news is, in his 2025 season, he is going to be 25 years old, and his Spot Track calculated market value is $7.6 million AAV. Is anybody interested in taking a spin on Mr. Azeez Ojulari?
Hell yeah, and I'm locking him up for multiple years.
You've been consistent.
Yeah.
You've been consistent there.
Multiple years. I mean, the age alone intrigues me. I still think he has a lot of upside left in his game. He has dealt with injuries early in his career, but I do think it's something that maybe you can weather that storm with him. And he's somebody that's produced. Like, you see the pressure numbers. He can get to the quarterback, and I feel like maybe in this system with a little more talent around him, he will be able to shine a little bit more. But absolutely, you lock him up for at least 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, the only thing, literally, I would say the only thing with Azeez Ojulari in terms of being a slam dunk is 2022 he missed 10 games, 2023 he missed 6, 2024 he missed 6. So that's closer to half the games missed than played than you would certainly like. But at the end of the day, that doesn't usually bother Brad Holmes.
Yeah.
To be serious, I'm
we haven't dealt with that.
I'm not even trying to make a joke or be funny. That doesn't usually bother Brad Holmes, and that makes him depreciated. Azeez Ojulari is not a $7.5 million a year talent. He's damn near, he's probably like a $15 million a year talent. So if he were to come here and be on this defensive line opposite from Aiden Hutchinson, and oh, by the way, even though he's been most of his career more of a 3-4 linebacker, he's got some experience putting his hand in the dirt as well.
Yeah.
I think that could be a good situation for him, although his situation last year, even though the Giants were terrible, the pass rushers were actually pretty good, but he was good. So Azeez Ojulari, I think, out of all of the guys that I'm about to profile, he is definitely the one who is the youngest and definitely has the most upside, and it's not even close.
Yeah,
not even close.
And I'm looking at the chat too, and it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but people are more on the side of, you know what, I wouldn't mind the Lions taking a chance on Azeez Ojulari here. I'm glad that they're in a position realistically where they're able to look at securing a foundation of depth, and that's where, when you look at a player like Azeez Ojulari, who could potentially be a stopgap for a couple years, especially depending on what you can, what price point you get him at, because that to me is what helps you with that long-term longevity. Hutch is going to have to get paid soon, and you still want to keep your flexibility and your financially in the coming seasons as well. And so if you get a player that you think can be there for a certain amount of time, and they have the luxury, in my opinion, to not have to put a whole lot of usage on them, so to speak, to be able to take better advantage of the fact that he's going to get some discount players.
Yeah. And young pass rushers just don't become available, at his price point too often. And somebody that can produce like he can, I think this would be a move that they seriously need to look into. He'd be top of my list right now.
Yep, and the best part is, and with all of these guys I'm about to mention, they are all still available. I know we've talked a lot about how, guys like Chase Young and Josh Sweat and Leonard Floyd, Joey Bosa have just fallen off the board in the last few days. But these guys, I think you're going to see, including with the last two, that there are some very interesting and intriguing options. And I think Azeez Ojulari is the most intriguing of all, just for his upside and his age alone. But he's not the only one. JB Smoove, put another one on up, if you would, please.
What about Mr. Matt Judon?
Matt Judon.
Come on down.
Last season, he did play 17 games. He had 5.5 sacks. He had 9 hits. He had 25 pressures. The hits and pressure numbers really just are mind-boggling for somebody like Matt Judon. He does have 2 double-digit sack seasons. He is going to be 33 years old in the 2025 season, which really gives me personally some concern about his lack of production last year. But look at that Spot Track calculated market value, 4.2 million AAV. I don't know if anybody's expected value dropped more over last year than Matt Judon, but I'll tell you what, I really don't like how he performed last year. Probably because I was expecting a lot of him, and to me, he failed in his mission of really being that missing piece on the Falcons' defense. But it's not just injury issues that make you depleted. Maybe it just wasn't a fit.
Yeah,
it could have
that's what
been.
I'm thinking.
And maybe the Lions are just a better fit, and you would get to play opposite Aiden Hutchinson. The one thing that gives me a little cause for pause about Matthew Judon is he has been more of a 3-4 linebacker. But at the end of the day, what have I said? None of these prospects are perfect, or else they wouldn't have calculated values of under 10 million, and they wouldn't be available. I said prospect. I mean players, but you understand what I'm saying.
I mean, they're still free agent prospects, and you know what? When we're going through exercises like this, and I look at what the Detroit Lions did to go into their defense and make sure they could be fortified going into next year with the coaches and such they brought in, including Rodgers, that's where I'm like, okay, these players have an opportunity to come to the Lions. They have an opportunity to step into a situation right away where there are expectations. They have a locker room that's going to big them up. I still take in weigh very, very heavily what Carlton Davis said about Dan Campbell in that locker room, and that's where I don't want to look at these players as just what they are, but also what Dan Campbell and co will be able to do with them, what their teammates are going to be able to do as well. And that's what makes me honestly excited about the prospects of them going out there and adding another vet and adding a couple more of these young pass rushers in the draft. And it's largely because of the culture that they already have in place. They're not stepping. We've seen in past regimes these types of things happen, and it didn't really work out because the locker room wasn't together, or they didn't have the coaching together, or when they, in the front office was whack, or they would have the front office together and the coaching wasn't together. Yeah. Now you have this thing that's working in totality, which makes me realistically very comfortable with them doing things like this.
KG, I know you mentioned Matt Judon before. So
yeah.
Sell me Matt Judon.
Well, I still think he is somebody that has something left in the tank. I do understand how it went in Atlanta, but there was a lot of things going wrong in Atlanta. I don't personally think it was him. I think it was more of just a scheme misfit. The defensive coordinator over there just didn't have a good grasp because they had a lot of talent. They just underperformed on that Atlanta defense.
And that's what I mean. Like stepping into the Lions culture, stepping into their success, stepping into their environments, their coaches, they know what they're doing versus like what you're highlighting, contrasting with the Falcons.
Exactly. I feel like a fit here would work a little bit better just based on the people he's playing around. And I know Kelvin Shepard can, he'll be able to draw up some stuff. But you're looking at a guy, 5.5 sacks, not bad. I know his numbers are down across the board, but overall, this is still somebody, a younger veteran. Like if it was him versus Von Miller, I would definitely choose Matt Judon in this situation if we're comparing the two players.
And I personally would choose Von Miller, but that's that's the thing. There's good and bad to all of these prospective free agents.
He's more available as well, Matt Judon. So
he was available.
Yeah, that's a big key.
He did play all 17 games, and there's definitely 36 for Von Miller. That is a dirty age when it comes to edge rushers. But I thought Von Miller was much better last year than Matt Judon. But
if he wasn't productive, he would be out of a job. So
absolutely. But there is one more name before we get to the big one at the end. But throw up the next one, JB Smoove, if you would, please.
Yep, one Mr. Dante Fowler Jr.
Dante Fowler Jr. Just like Matt Judon, he was very available last season, 17 games. Unlike any other player that I have mentioned or will be mentioning, he had double-digit sacks last season. 10.5 in 2024, 12 quarterback hits, 44 pressures. I really like that number. 2 double-digit sack seasons, including last year. He is going to be 31 years old in 2025, which it's weird because I feel like he just came into the NFL. Man, time flies. And his Spot Track calculated market value is $5.2 million AAV. Dante Fowler Jr., are you guys interested?
I am interested. I feel like this is maybe the most realistic out of all of the moves that we named so far. I can see him fitting in with this Lions culture. Once again, you're playing with a lot of talent on this defensive line, so that can also open him up a bit. I like his speed off the edge, and this is the kind of prototype that I would like to see bookend with Aiden Hutchinson. Is he perfect? No, he's not a complete pass rusher, but he is somebody that can get to the quarterback effectively. I would be on board with this move.
Dante
Absolutely.
Fowler Jr., to me, what's interesting about him, and it might not be relevant anymore, is that out of all the guys that I've profiled and will profile, I got one more name after this, he's the one to me that has had the most inconsistencies throughout his career. You could say Azeez Ojulari, but his biggest problem has been injury. But he's had some good years. He's had some, when Dante Fowler Jr., he's had some good years. He's had some years where it just didn't seem like it was a fit. But this season, I would say, was his best year since he was with the Rams in 2019. And let's be honest, I know that it's not all about sacks, but if you can put a guy that could give you 10.5 sacks opposite Aiden Hutchinson, it would be absolutely dangerous. And he is somebody who has been both a 4-3 defensive end and even played some Sam linebacker last year. So he is very versatile, and he's produced no matter what position he's been in. It's just his production over his career has been relatively inconsistent, but he's had some highs, and he usually at least gives you some sack production.
Yeah, and I'm waiting for this last review, and I got to ask you guys, too, who's your top 3 after that?
Okay.
Ooh, that is interesting. But here's the big number. I mean, the big name. And WeezyD313, look away. It is one Mr. Zadarius Smith.
Big Z.
Isn't it funny how you look at some of these numbers and it's like, man, Zadarius Smith put up the better numbers than any of them last year. 17 games, also very available. 9 sacks, 17 quarterback hits, which is excellent. 63 pressures, which is also excellent. He has 3 double-digit sack seasons plus the 9 last year. His age in his 2025 season is 33. I think his biggest defect to coming back is we already got rid of him. And I don't know if Zadarius Smith himself wants to come back on a super cheap contract. He does not have a Spot Track AA calculated market value either, because I think it has to do with the fact that he was just cut a couple of days ago. But is anybody interested in bringing back Zadarius Smith on a cheaper deal? Hey, there we go.
Fired up there, man. Like seriously, out of the whole list of players, he's number 1 for me because he's the one that I do believe in. If something happened, knock on wood, he's shown that he can at least step up and bring you something in that place as well. Some of these other players were talking about who they would be within the prospects of depth, but we saw Zadarius Smith honestly be more than serviceable when the depth disappeared as well. And that makes me more comfortable in terms of his name on this list than a lot of the others, because we know he messes with the locker room. We know that he's going to be a leader and respected in the locker room, but on the field, he did perform. And he performed without kind of all of the fixings around him. The one thing that we were all sitting here saying after that loss and before they released him is we can't wait to see Big Z and with playing with Hutch, playing with a healthy defensive line. And the numbers, they don't lie either. So it's like, for me, he is number 1 on that list. I just like a lot of the things that he brings to the table, and I do believe we got to wait to see what that money's going to be like, because I know you guys both kind of feel he might be a person who can go out there and get one okay contract before the end of that career.
Yeah, maybe. KG, you interested?
It's funny because I don't hear all that Jag shit now. Where it's at, you don't know what you got till it's gone. But this is like top of the list because, one, he's already been in the building, and we already got a taste of what he could bring. And unfortunately, we still are left wondering what would him and Hutch, bookend to each other look like. So I think there's a lot in the tank for Zadarius Smith. You can bring him back. I do think he would be open to a cheaper contract because he knows the game at this point. He knows, his best money making days are probably over, but why not come to, one of the better situations in the NFL? You got a chance at winning a Super Bowl, and you get to beat up on some of the teams that didn't believe in you. I think Zadarius is a perfect fit here. I would love to see him back, but it's just all about price point.
And that's the thing, KG. I love that you mentioned that because 3.5 of his 4 sacks during his time with the Lions were against divisional opponents last year.
Yep.
So that's really where he wreaked the most havoc, and it was a really close divisional race. A lot of those Zadarius Smith plays that he was making, particularly at the end of the Thanksgiving game against Caleb Williams, which sent them into an absolute tailspin. That was Zadarius Smith. That was Zadarius Smith who played a really good game against the Vikings in the last game of the season to clinch the division. He also played very well against the Packers. The man he produced. And when you look at his numbers that I put up, this is last year versus all of the others that I put up. He had the best season by the numbers. If you're one of those people like Wheezy who wants to add a bunch of caveats, maybe some of them are somewhat fair, but you can't argue. The pressure numbers, the hits numbers, those are better than anybody else I mentioned on this. And he did a lot of that for us last year.
And listen, we know he's not a perfect player. Like, we're not just glazing him for no reason, though. Like, this guy is still very, very productive for his age. Double-digit sack guy this late into his career. And he's a perfect fit for this team. We've already seen what it could look like. But I want to see what it looks like if he's not the focal point of what offenses look at as, oh, that's their best pass rusher. Let's just take him out the game.
Exactly. That is where my mind is at. That's where all of ours has been. That's where people's minds were before. I don't know how the winds, some of the winds changed so quickly as it relates to the Zadarius Smith conversation. But I get why the Lions, they had to do what they had to do. You're talking about the long-term success. You got to protect that cap as you move forward, especially you're about to shell out some big cash on that defensive line already. And if you're going into the draft, it's going to be more investment there as well. But a Big Z is one that I'm hoping if they can find a way to get him back here, honestly, even if you have to sweeten it with like a second-year deal, I feel like you do that for a guy like that who you can trust in your system. And that's the biggest point, is the fact that he's no longer going to be the one that we're asking to carry really the brunt of the work on that defensive line. Now we're just asking him, hey, can you step in next to some dogs like Aleem and when he gets back, and Hutch and do some work, and whoever the young guys that they go and get in this draft.
Yeah, I would feel more comfortable with him starting over a Davenport. But if you have Davenport in rotation with him, then I think that looks pretty good.
Yeah, and honestly, that I'm for it because I would have paid him his salary and his signing bonus and just kept him anyway, but that's all right. Yeah. It would be a Brad Holmes masterclass if you could get him cheaper. But before we move on, how about each of us give our top 3 if we had one? Would you like me to start, or who wants to go first?
I mean, I did from the start. I was like, look,
go ahead.
Zadarius, Judon, Von Miller.
Ooh,
that's the 3.
All the old heads, huh?
All the OGs.
All the old heads.
OGs.
Hey, I'm not mad at it. My top 3 out of that list, of course, Zadarius, just because he's already been here. Azeez Ojulari is number 2, and I would put Dante Fowler as a 3.
I have the exact same list as you, KG. I got Zadarius Smith because of his production was better than any of those guys, and he's got the familiarity. I've got Azeez Ojulari at 2 because of the potential upside, and I got Dante Fowler Jr. at 3, more by default because I really am turned off by Matthew Judon's season last year, and 36 years old is really tough. That's a really tough age for a Von Miller. And Dante Fowler Jr. is a little bit less long in the tooth than those guys anyway.
There are some great options out there still for what we're talking about. Yep. Obviously, you're not looking for the home run hitter, but you're looking for somebody who can get home just a little bit. And when you look at what they can do with that depth, and I saw how they were able to churn things with their secondary last year because of that depth, is where I do say, what if this team actually doesn't get decimated by injuries and they're able to use a rotation rather than have to up the usage of their 3rd and 4th and then practice squad, and then guys are signing just off the street effectively. When they have an opportunity to just kind of set the rotation and just let that ride out, that's where I believe we're going to see this Detroit Lions defense take a big step forward next year, especially when you consider